Congratulations, you have just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm the founder of The Silver Edge, and our mission is to help you build and maintain a lean, healthy body that you love for the rest of your life, so that you can show up in the second half of your life as the healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself. We have another episode of the Coach's Corner today, so no guest, it's just me, and we'll be back next week with our normal interview format. So this week, I want to answer a listener's question and then talk about what those of us over 50 who want to drop a few pounds might learn from a 20-year-old bodybuilder. After that, I take a few minutes to talk about how to reverse aging by optimizing our hormone levels. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to invite you over to our private Facebook group. It's the Over 50 Lean Body Blueprint, and our goal over there is to educate, inspire, and entertain, but mostly to build a community of like-minded people who are interested in learning more about healthy aging. So if you are a Facebooker and you're not already in there, drop on by. We'd love to have you. I'll drop a link for that into the show notes, and you can find that at silveredgefitness.com/201. Okay, let's do this. Let's get on with today's show. What's new over here at the Silver Edge? Okay, so most of you probably don't know this, but I've had this business now for a little over 3 years. And prior to that, I didn't have any social media. I didn't have any Instagram, no Facebook, no nothing. But as it turns out, you cannot have an online business. I think any online business, but certainly you can't have an online fitness business without having a social media presence. So I started this whole social media thing a little over 3 years ago with Instagram. And then a few months later, I kind of went kicking and screaming into Facebook. Probably 6, 8, 12 months after that, I started my private Facebook group. And we've evolved. So since then, we now have 2 YouTube channels. I have my personal Facebook page. We have the Facebook group. I've got an Instagram. We got an email list. We have all these different things. And starting this week, as of I think maybe Wednesday, we are now on TikTok. Yep, that's right. The Silver Edge is on TikTok. So this was something that was suggested to me by my coach, by my business coach, said, hey, you're making these videos, you might as well throw them up on TikTok. And I said, I don't know. I think that's probably a younger person's game. And I was actually challenged to go into TikTok and start to, search for over 50 health or over 50 fitness and see what's in there. Lo and behold, there's a ton of stuff on TikTok. So if you are a TikToker, head on over. I think as of now, I've got maybe 4 or 5 videos up, and they're just repeats, to be honest, from what's on either my Facebook or my Instagram. But I will be creating original content for TikTok. Eventually, I'll get in the game. I'll figure that out. But you can follow us over there at The Silver Edge. So check us out. Question of the week. You can submit your questions for me to answer on podcast episodes like these by writing your question to coach@silveredgefitness.com. Each week, I will go through our questions, pick one, and answer them here on the air. This week's question comes from Erica. And let's see, Erica doesn't say whether I should or should not say her last name, so we're just going to go with Erica. And she asks, I listened to a recent podcast episode where you described rebuilding your metabolism and then dieting and repeating that process over and over. I've also heard you say that yo-yo dieting is harmful. How is that process you were describing in that podcast different from yo-yo dieting? Okay, I love this question. Thank you, Erica. Basically, the difference is in the metabolic restoration phase. So let me back up. For those of you that have no idea maybe what Erica's talking about, if you're new to the show or you haven't listened to some of my other shows, you may not know what she's talking about. But here at the Silver Edge, we talk a lot about optimizing, rebuilding, and repairing your metabolism. We talk about this framework of If you want to lose weight, what you do before and after your diet is way more important than what you actually do during your diet phase. And the way that kind of looks is there's a pre-diet phase, and we'll just call that metabolic restoration. Then there's a maintenance phase, and then there's a diet phase. And then we're going to kind of repeat that process over and over again until you get to where you want to be, to your healthy weight. Say you have 20 pounds to lose, something like that. So here's the main difference, and it's in that intentional phase where we focus on recovering from our diet phase. So that metabolic restoration piece. What we're doing is we're going to get ourselves healthy enough to diet. We're going to go on a diet. We're going to slowly but surely get ourselves healthy enough before we go back into another diet. We're going to rinse and repeat that. Now, remember the long-term goal when we talk about this framework, metabolic restoration, and then maintenance, and then a diet phase, and then rinse, repeat, right? Really, our long-term goal in that framework is get to a place where we don't need to be constantly dieting. In fact, hopefully we get to a place where we don't ever need to be dieting. We may do small tweaks to our body composition from there, but we don't want to be in a place where we're constantly running that diet cycle, metabolic restoration, maintenance phase, back to another diet cycle. We're only doing that for as long as we need to until we get to that lean, healthy body that we're trying to build. Now, contrast that with yo-yo dieting. A yo-yo diet's wherever you jump on whatever that latest diet fad is. And that could be, I don't care what it is. It could be Atkins. It could be Optavia, Weight Watchers, intermittent fasting, any of them out there. But you jump on it to lose some weight. You lose some weight and then you stop. And then what happens? We all know what happens when you gain that weight back, right? Whether you gain it back in the next 6 months or the next 2 years, it's coming back, right? And that is an unhealthy place to be when we're constantly dieting, losing weight, gaining it back. And it's that gaining it back process where we just don't have a strategic plan for what happens after the diet. We don't have a strategic plan before we start dieting. We don't have a strategic roadmap for what happens after we diet. And that's really the difference. Yo-yo dieting doesn't have a strategy. It's just kind of whimsical. Hey, I've all of a sudden, crap, I've gained these 20 pounds back again. Time to go back on another diet. And that's a yo-yo diet mentality. Whereas what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this framework is much, much more strategic. We have a roadmap and we have an end date. And we're going to be in these phases of dieting and then recovering from dieting only until we get to where we want to be. And then we're going to switch out of that and go into more of a maintenance mode. I hope that helps. Thanks again to Erica. And remember, you folks can submit your question for me to answer on this show at coach@silveredgefitness.com. Social media shout out. Okay, so I want to do my social media shout outs here. Let's start with our fitness shout out. And my fitness social media shout out today is Dr. Heather Moday. That's Moday. She has been on this podcast. She was on this podcast last summer. And the name of that podcast, I think, was Balance Your Immune System for Optimal Health. And Dr. Moday is a functional doctor, and really she specializes in immune system optimization. But she talks a lot about inflammation and gut health and just all this good stuff. Great content on there. Definitely, you guys, go give her a follow. If you're an Instagrammer, go give her a follow. Show her some love. Her Instagram handle is at Dr. Heather Moday, and that's DrHeatherModay. Now, for my personal shout out this week, I just found this guy here this week, as a matter of fact, and it's Funny Weight Loss. And that's actually the Instagram handle is at Funny Weight Loss, all run together. And it's just what it sounds like. So this apparently, I don't know that much about him, but it appears that he is a guy who's undergone his own weight loss transformation. And he's putting out some content that's humorous. It makes light of a serious situation. And I think his audience are people that are trying to lose weight, struggling with weight loss. He's got all these funny videos, all these funny memes, but he's just holding open this safe space for folks that are on a weight loss journey, maybe you're frustrated, things like that. But give him a follow. Again, that's at Funny Weight Loss. And I'll throw both of those into the show notes. And you guys can find that at silveredgefitness.com/201. What can those of us over 50 looking to drop some weight learn from a 20-year-old bodybuilder? Okay, so last week I did a post on social media and I was kind of making fun of just those young fitness influencers, these 20-year-olds out there without their shirts or with the booty shorts on. And the post was something like, hey, you shouldn't, if you're over 50 and trying to lose some weight, you shouldn't be getting your nutrition and exercise advice from people that look like this. And it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but there's some truth to that as well, right? What works for a 20-year-old kid who's absolutely shredded probably isn't going to work for you and I for our goals. But then later, or maybe I have the timing switched, maybe this was before. At any rate, Coach Monica and I were talking with one of our rock star clients, so shout out to Jennifer, about how similar our programming is to bodybuilders. And she was kind of saying, hey, this sounds a lot like what you're asking me to do sounds a lot like bodybuilding. And she's absolutely right. We borrow heavily from bodybuilders in our framework here at the Silver Edge. And I thought it might be fun to pick at this a little bit, to talk about what can a 60-year-old woman say who has 30 pounds to lose, what could she learn from a 20-year-old bodybuilder? All right, so let's just start. When we say bodybuilding, that's very much an aesthetic goal. And we could lump in, say, our fitness models here as well. Anybody who's interested in what I'll call extreme aesthetics. But for our purposes, we're going to talk about bodybuilders, male bodybuilders, which are the big, hulking, giant guys, and then female bodybuilders, which there's a number of different classes. There's the bikini class, which is more that lean, athletic look, and then there's all the way up to the very big, bulky ladies as well. But bodybuilders, when we talk about bodybuilding, we're talking about a very aesthetic goal. And bodybuilders are the kings and queens of aesthetics. They have learned to manipulate fat loss and muscle building better than anybody else in the world for this extreme aesthetic look. Now, I just want to go ahead and throw this out here that extreme aesthetic look should never be confused with extreme health or extreme performance for that matter. You take a bodybuilder who is show ready, meaning it's the day or two or the day of that they're going to step out onto the stage. None of their blood markers are good. They're in the trash. If it's a female and she's of menstruating age, she hasn't had her period in a while. If it's a guy, his hormones are shot to shit. Their health is crap. But they've done this intentionally for this extreme aesthetic look. So I just wanted to throw that out there. When you look at, say, a bodybuilder, or even to a lesser degree, but still a fitness model on the front cover of a magazine, we're not talking about extreme health, and we're not talking about extreme performance either. That bodybuilder, if you said, hey, go run a mile, I'm going to time you, that ain't going to happen. It's not going to be pretty. But what they are masters of is this extreme aesthetic look. They've learned to manipulate fat and muscle in order to have this very extreme look. So what could we, you and I, learn from a 20-year-old bodybuilder? There's a number of different things. Let's start with consistency. So bodybuilders are famously consistent. They have a roadmap. They have a plan, and by God, they stick to it. So this plan is going to have multiple facets. It's going to have an exercise programming. It's going to have some nutrition programming, and they're hitting that day in and day out. They don't just know what they're going to do this week or this month, meaning their exercises or their food. They know it months in advance. And let's just say you've got a bodybuilder and his or her show date is 6 months away. They've got 6 months of planning out in front of them. They know what they're going to eat. They know what exercises they're going to do on what day. They know how they're going to manipulate intensity and calories and all these other things, manipulate their protein, and their carbs, certainly, as they get closer to being stage ready. But they're very, very consistent. They work out day in and day out. Now, in a bodybuilder's case, that's probably an hour or two in the gym every single day, maybe even some two-a-days. For you and I, no, that's not good advice for us. But the idea that we need to be consistent, whether that's 2 days a week, 3 days a week in the gym, or maybe it's 15 minutes every morning, but some sort of routine, some sort of consistency to our working out, some sort of consistency to our nutrition as well. Many of us fall into that pattern where we're really good during the weekdays with our nutrition, and then I'll be kind and generous and say not so much on the weekends. and that's inconsistent. So that's one of the first things I think we can take away from, say, that 20-year-old bodybuilder who's really obsessed with sculpting muscle and burning fat and having this extreme aesthetic. They are, in fact, very consistent. The next thing we can learn from our 20-year-old bodybuilder is the importance of protein. Now, for that 20-year-old, the protein's really important because he or she knows that when they ingest protein, it's going to break down into amino acids and it's going to build up those muscles. And that's really what they're trying to do, is showcase that muscular, or in the case of the ladies, maybe that leaner muscular look, but in the guy, that big bulky muscular look. And they know that protein's important for that. So they're eating that protein, lots and lots of protein, by the way, because they want those muscles. They want that muscle growth. You and I may be eating protein for similar reasons. We also want to grow some muscle. We want to burn some fat. And so there is some value in protein there for that aesthetic reasons for us, but it's even more for those of us over 50. That 20-year-old bodybuilder probably doesn't even know what the word sarcopenia means. Sarcopenia is age-related muscle loss, or osteopenia, which is age-related bone density loss. But those of us over 50, 60, 70, we probably have heard those words, and those are concerns of ours. And eating protein is absolutely critical for building muscle, for keeping bones healthy and strong. So while the reasons might be different why a 20-year-old is prioritizing protein than why we should be, we can still learn from them. If you think about your typical meathead bodybuilder, you're probably thinking of a great big guy carrying around Tupperwares full of his chicken and broccoli, always getting in that protein, right? The next thing we can learn from our 20-year-old bodybuilder is the importance of calories and of dieting. So remember back, we talked about, was it Erica's question where she said, hey, what's the difference between yo-yo dieting and a framework? Well, really that framework is pulled from, it was invented by bodybuilders. Bodybuilders are the masters at manipulating their calories. So let's just go back to an example. Let's say a woman's got a bikini bodybuilding show. It's 6 months out. She's probably going to spend the next 3 months in a calorie surplus, a small calorie surplus. She's building muscle, getting stronger, and manipulating her diet solely for the purpose of building muscle. Now, we can't build just 100% muscle and no fat. So she's going to gain a little bit of fat in this process as well. But when it comes time for her to go into her cut, into her diet, she's going to manipulate her calories such that she is losing primarily body fat and very little of that precious muscle that she's worked so hard to gain. So bodybuilders are absolutely masters of the science and the art, really, of calorie manipulation. And if you remember back, I was talking about that framework. Hey, we're going to do metabolic restoration. Think of that in the bodybuilding terms as, hey, we're going to build some muscle. And then, hey, we're going to be in maintenance for a while. It doesn't really apply to our bodybuilder here. But then we're going to go into a diet. And the bodybuilder says, hey, it's time for me to cut. I need to shred some of this fat so I can showcase all this muscle definition. So they are masters of that manipulation. And we can absolutely apply that to us. In fact, that whole framework basically comes out of, it has its roots in the bodybuilding world. Again, because if you want to lose weight, that's an aesthetic goal. And bodybuilding is really the kings and queens of aesthetic goals. Okay, next up, and this seems kind of obvious, but bodybuilders, our 20-year-old bodybuilder understands the importance of building muscle. And we talked about this a little bit in the protein, where the 20-year-old, he or she is building muscle purely for aesthetics, purely for probably vanity, purely for show, whereas it's a different game for us. We want to build muscle. Yeah, we want to build muscle to look good. I don't know any 50, 60, 70-year-old guy that wouldn't want to be lean and jacked, or a 50, 60, 70-year-old woman wouldn't have a lean, tone, athletic look to her. But having that muscle on us, again, is going to make us stronger. It's going to make us less likely to fall and injure ourselves as we get older. It's going to promote a healthy hormone profile, all of these wonderful things that come with muscle building. We know that muscle is the organ of longevity. So our reasons are a little bit different, but there's still that primacy of muscle. Next up is our bodybuilder can teach us a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit about lifting form, weightlifting form. And I want to do a caveat here. Bodybuilders can do some strange things in the gym. They are concerned with this absolute perfect symmetrical physique, and they work on hitting muscles from all different angles. But they have this concept of, I know exactly how many sets, how many reps, and what tempo I'm going to use, because I'm only concerned in lifting weights in so much as it's a vehicle for body transformation. So very often what you'll see bodybuilders do is really concentrate on the squeeze at the top of the lift and then have that slow negative or that slow lowering phase, because again, they're only concerned with hypertrophy. That is, with that muscle building, that aesthetic part of lifting weights. And to a small degree, we use that in our programming as well. We say, hey, when we're lifting, we want to lift with perfect form. Now, a 20-year-old bodybuilder is lifting with perfect form because he or she knows that's the best way to get the absolute most juice out of any given lift. We're lifting with perfect form. Yes, we want to get as many gains as we possibly can from our time in the gym, but really we're lifting with perfect form because we're not quite as resilient as a 20-year-old. We want to make sure that we're a little bit more cautious. We are keeping injury top of mind. We certainly don't want to hurt ourselves in the gym, but that importance of form is something that comes again out of the bodybuilding world. If you look at power lifters or Olympic weightlifters or people who are more interested in performance, the perfect form and that slow squeeze at the top isn't useful when we're talking about performance, but it's very, very useful for those of us that are looking for aesthetics. And then last, we've already covered this, but our young bodybuilders know the importance of dieting. And again, they may not have the healthiest form of dieting. They don't. They do not have the healthiest form of dieting. They are masters of using a diet to strip away fat. They understand the importance of dieting. They understand the importance of being in that calorie deficit. And they know how to manipulate their diet so that they can shred every last gram of fat in order to have those muscles really, really pop. So bodybuilders are masters at manipulating their physiques. They are the masters of aesthetics. Our bodybuilders and our fitness models are all, remember, they're chasing an extreme aesthetic look, which is not in any way healthy. So when you see that, especially those bodybuilders that are just completely diced on stage and they're flexing and they look great to you or they don't. Either way, know that they're chasing an extreme aesthetic look, and that's not healthy. And same with the fitness models that we see on the covers of magazines in the grocery stores. When you see that guy with that shredded six-pack or that lady with the poppin' booty and the super six-pack herself, know that that's not a healthy look. Those people are also doing pretty extreme looks, and very often they diet down and they have these crazy protocols to diet down for those photo shoots. Not to mention there's oftentimes some photoshopping and touching up of those photos, but those are athletes as well. Those cover models or fitness models are 100% athletes or aesthetic athletes, and they're using these same principles that bodybuilders are. They're just not getting as extreme when it comes to getting huge or big. Now, know also that when we talk about our young bodybuilders, drug use is rampant. Many of them have crippling body dysmorphia issues, and applying a 20-year-old's nutrition and workout plan to those of us over 50 is pretty much a certain recipe for disaster. But a lot of that old bro science that comes from the bodybuilding community is in fact applicable to those of us over 50 who just want to shed a few pounds and look good naked. How to reverse aging. Okay, this last Wednesday, I had Dr. Greg Brannon on the podcast. He talked to us all about how to optimize your hormonal health. He specializes in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy for men and women. And we talked about the alarming decline in hormone levels, specifically the sex hormones, right? So that's testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone in both men and women. And Dr. Greg said that this is primarily due to the toxin overload in our environment and subsequently in our bodies. And I was thinking about this maybe a couple weeks ago. I was on a call with a gentleman who booked a metabolic assessment with me, and he asked right towards the end of our conversation what I thought about TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. I think he had just recently started it. And I told him, here's the deal. I'm all for it. I've personally shared my story several times on this podcast and other places that in my mid 40s, I was just a metabolic train wreck. I was in the worst shape of my life. I was very sick. And I went on testosterone replacement therapy for a few months. Now, somewhere along the road there, I decided, hey, I'm going to get my shit together. I'm going to try and get healthy. And I just took myself off of testosterone, have not been on it since. But truth be told, I've never tested much north of 500, which is at the low end, really, of normal. So testosterone replacement is probably in my future. But here's the deal. Before you consider HRT or hormone replacement therapy, I'd strongly suggest cleaning up your lifestyle first. And there's a number of things we can do in order to really optimize our hormone levels before we start looking to something like bioidentical HRT. And first up on that list is to detox. So when I say detox, I'm not talking about doing crazy juice cleanses or chugging apple cider vinegar. I'm talking about detoxing our environment. There are toxins literally everywhere. So one of the first places you could start is your water. Do you have a good, safe water supply that you're constantly drinking from? You guys have probably heard me say on this show, I'd love to see everybody drinking half their body weight in ounces of water every day, but having a good, clean, pure source of water is critical. Next up is trying to reduce our dependence on plastics. And this is the tough one. Plastics are everywhere. Right before I started recording this, I was just in my plastic protein bin with my plastic protein scoop, scooping out protein powder. So anywhere possible, let's try to reduce our reliance on plastic. So certainly in your kitchen with your Tupperware, things like that, you might want to consider swapping those out for glass containers, things of that nature. A big area for most of us that's chock full of toxins is our bathroom. All our cleaning, hygiene, and beauty products, almost all of those products are basically chemical shit shows. There's a lot of harmful chemicals in all of these things. Now, there is a website called EWG.org, and that's Environmental Working Group, EWG.org. They also have an app, and they've got a really good database. It's a huge database, so you can go in there, guys, ladies, put your soap, put your shampoo, and literally just put the actual the brand name of it. So if you use Dial soap, put in Dial soap, and it'll come up and it'll give you a rating of, horrible, bad, okay, pretty good, or great. And they have a database of damn near everything you can think of. So definitely check them out. I think it's fun to go into your bathroom and just take one, start with your deodorant, something you put on every day. Start with your toothpaste and see how it stacks up. Next up, the kitchen. We already talked about the plastic and things like Tupperware, but certainly all of your Teflon pans. Yeah, they're convenient, but they're also toxic. So consider swapping them out for maybe cast iron or ceramic cookware. Also, your laundry, things like laundry soap. If you're using dryer sheets, take a look at the ingredients on your dryer sheets there. Might be some better alternatives for you. But toxins are everywhere. They're in our bedding. They're in our clothing. They're in our food. And you can drive yourself nuts trying to detox. So my recommendation is start one place. So maybe start in your bathroom. Start with your deodorant. Start with your soap. Start with the things that you use every day. Ladies, some of your makeup. Go to that EWG.org site and start putting those in and Googling, seeing what might be a better alternative for that. And I want to make a point here before we leave detoxing, and that is that you'll often hear people, I've seen very brilliant, very popular PhD scientists on social media saying, that's ridiculous. Don't let people talk to you about the toxins in these everyday products. The poison is in the dose, and the dose in those, and say your underarm deodorant is minuscule. It's not enough to hurt you. And I would say, yeah, but I'm taking that, I'm microdosing a little bit of poison every single day. That's not optimal. Maybe it's not hurting me directly, but it certainly isn't helping me in any way whatsoever. But what about all of the other toxins in this, just as we increase this toxic load by the shampoo that I'm using, by the mouthwash, by the toothpaste, by the soap, by the shampoo, by the Teflon in my pan, and all of these things have an additive effect and are building up in our bodies. So again, I would just leave you with this thought on toxins or detoxing. Progress, not perfection, like all things, right? I literally almost drove myself insane about 5 years ago when I really went down the rabbit hole personally for this. I completely cleaned out all of my bathroom. I use primarily stuff from Living Libations these days, a few other products, but I'm very, very particular about what I put on in my body. I'm very particular about my kitchenware, my laundry soap, things of that nature. All right, so that was number one. That's detox. Start a detox practice. Number two thing you can do to optimize your hormones for a youthful, zestful you, and that is to get strong. My buddy Mark Ripito is famous for saying strong people are harder to kill. And we talk a lot about strength training on the show. I mean, we just talked about what we can learn from 20-year-old bodybuilders, but the importance of muscle for longevity, and not just the muscle that you get from jogging or jumping around like a maniac, but that type 2 fast twitch muscle that you get from picking up heavy things and putting them back down is critical. And as we mentioned in the last segment, it's critical if you want to lose some body fat and build some muscle and have that lean toned muscular look. It's critical for that, but it's even more critical for those of us as we're aging as part of our healthy aging process. And yes, I'm talking to you ladies. Ain't nobody going to get no big bulky muscles from lifting weights. What you will get is a lean toned body that you're chasing, and you're not going to get them with those cute pink 1.5 pound hand weights. You're going to get them from a barbell, from a dumbbell, from a kettlebell, from those nice thick bands, some sort of sensible strength training program. Number three for optimizing our hormones is to eat real food. Let's get rid of the ultra-processed, hyper-palatable food and drink, all that crap that we're putting in our body. Here's a fun statistic for you I read recently. 90% of the food found in our grocery store didn't even exist 100 years ago. And if you think about it, we're literally eating ourselves sick. And sometimes we're eating ourselves to death. And most of the stuff that we find in grocery stores today is not really food, but rather a food-like substance. So what can we do? We can start to, and again, I'm not advocating that you wholesale switch all of your processed food for real whole foods, but I am advocating that you start down this path. I'd like to start with protein. If you get 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, we mentioned that calculation in the last segment as well. Start there. Just start with eating protein. A couple of things will happen. One is you're going to have the amino acids to build some muscle, but protein is the most satiating of our macronutrients. Our macronutrients are our proteins, our carbs, and our fats. So it helps you feel full longer. So that's very helpful when we're in our diet phases. The next thing is after you got your protein dialed in, eat lots and lots of veggies, especially those leafy greens, and try and get lots of variety. This is one I personally struggle with. I'm not a big fan of eating vegetables. Those of you that listen for a while probably know that. I'm a nutrition coach that doesn't like to eat his veggies. I do it anyway. I just find ways to get vegetables into my body. And then last up, we have those healthy fats, specifically the omega-3s that we get from things like salmon and sardines, olives, olive oil, avocados, nuts, things like that. But really try to figure out ways that you can get rid of the processed food, especially that ultra-processed food, and replace it with real food. Number 4, get your beauty rest, people. Sleep makes everything better, and 8 hours is our gold standard, right? And when we talk about sleep, what we really want, we want 8 hours of good, restful sleep. But what we're really trying to do is we want those healthy REM and deep sleep cycles, because that's where the magic happens. That's where our hormones are released. Muscle is being built, brain's being repaired. We're cleaning up damage that happened to our body during the day. We're storing short-term memories to long-term memories. Just all of this magic happening while we sleep. And too often we just short circuit that by not getting enough sleep. So if you're somebody who doesn't currently get 8 hours of good restful sleep, here's just a couple of tips. 1, sleep in a cool, dark room. Try and get some blackout curtains. Get rid of any little LED lights, things of that nature. Make it really dark. Make it really cool. Get it down below 70 degrees. Next tip is to digitally detox 1 hour before bed. So we know that the light from our electronic screens emits a blue light, and that actually inhibits our production of melatonin, which your body naturally releases as it starts to get dark out. And when we're staring at a screen, that blue light is again inhibiting that melatonin production. And I know some of you are out there, well, I wear my blue blocker glasses, and that's all fine and good. That's certainly better than not. But what are you watching on electronic screens right before bed? Is it stimulating movies? Is it triggering news? Is it social media scrolling? Is it really helping prepare your mind for deep sleep? And then the other tip I'll give you is this: consistent bed and wake time. So go to bed at the same time every night. And yeah, that means the weekends as well. And wake up at the same time. And sure, there's going to be some exceptions to that rule, but make that the rule. And I think that those three things just by themselves will help improve your sleep a little bit. And if you want more tips on sleep, we've done a couple of podcast episodes on sleep. I think the most recent one was with a guy named Devin Burke, where he deep dives into all the things you could do to really optimize your sleep. All right, number 5 for optimizing your hormones is to get outside. Go for a walk. Specifically, get outside in the sunshine. Vitamin D deficiency has been linked with lower hormone levels, especially estrogen, which again is critical for men and women. And it is critical for strong, healthy bones, for building muscle. Vitamin D is an amazing, it's actually a hormone, not a vitamin, but that's a whole nother story. But the other thing that happens when we get outside and go for a walk early in the day is it helps set that circadian rhythm, which again can help improve our sleep. So cortisol and melatonin should have an inverse relationship. When we wake up in the morning, we want our melatonin to fall off and our cortisol to spike up. And the best way to do that is to get outside in natural sunlight. And the opposite is true in the evening. We want our melatonin coming up and we want our cortisol going down. So if you're scrolling through the news, your cortisol is probably not going down in a nice healthy manner, and the blue light from your screen is probably also inhibiting that melatonin, so not conducive to sleep. But getting outside, going for a walk, I love that idea of going out for a morning walk. If you have a dog, your dog would love that, going out for a walk. And of course, walking has many, many benefits. And by getting outside early in the day, getting a little bit of that vitamin D, a little bit of natural light is a great way to get a head start on your steps for the day. Number 6, manage your stress levels. So speaking of cortisol, most of us live in a state these days of chronic stress. And once upon a time, look, our stress was a survival mechanism for us. It's meant to keep us alive. So if a mean, scary cave bear came around the boulder, my stress response would kick in and I would have that flight or fight response. And in case of a cave bear, it's probably flight. But our body doesn't know the difference between that cave bear and being pissed off at a coworker, or being pissed off because we're stuck in traffic, or having an argument with our spouse or our significant other, or dealing with our kids. And what happens is all of these stressors in our life start to stack up. There's a term called allostatic load, and it references what that means is all of our stresses are additive. That's good stresses and bad stresses, by the way. So things like working out, things like dieting, things like cold plunges or saunas, these are actually stressors for our body. But so are things like the things we talked about, work stress, life stress. All of these stresses are additive. And being in this chronically stressed state causes inflammation. It really, really just wreaks havoc on our whole body health and, of course, on our hormones. So a couple of things you can do to help manage stress levels. A lot of us, we may or may not be able to control the actual stressors in our life, but we do have control over how we respond to that. So a couple of things that I can throw at you quickly. One is deep breathing in the moment. So just taking that deep breath into your belly, holding it for a moment, and that long, slow exhale. A great way to move yourself from that fight or flight sort of feeling into that rest and digest feeling. I'm a big fan of having some sort of practice in your life that's meant to ground you. I personally like starting or finishing my day with these types of things, but these could be something like journaling, having a gratitude practice, having a prayer practice, a meditation practice. All right. Number 7 is to maintain a lean, healthy body composition. So if you do everything above, that's going to be a natural byproduct of this healthy lifestyle. But we know that carrying either too much or too little body fat, so keep that in mind when I say a healthy body composition, I don't mean skinny. I mean a healthy body composition. So carrying too much body fat, not enough body fat, both there's two ends of the spectrum, not healthy, not helping our hormones even a little bit. So maintaining that lean, healthy body going to help us optimize our hormones. Number 8 is to get your hormone levels checked. Make this a part of your annual physical, or you can do this by mail. I personally have used Dr. Stephen Cabral over at Equilife. I think very highly of him and his practice, and they have a ton. I think you test for damn near everything over there at Equilife right at your home. They send you finger prick kits. They send you urine, stool analysis kits. They have hair clipping kits to test things so that you can get, all sorts of things tested online now. But I would, if you've never had your hormones checked, certainly even if you don't think you need them checked, I would get them checked just so you have a baseline and you can compare them to future testings. But having a practice of some sort of an annual check to just look at those levels, see where they are, see how they trend over time, I think is a great practice. And finally, I just want to leave you with this. If you have done all of the above, and you have all of these lifestyle factors dialed in and you still feel lousy, maybe it's time to look into HRT or hormone replacement therapy. And remember, what we're trying to treat are your symptoms, not necessarily a low number. I just told you earlier that my number usually hovers around 400s, maybe on a really good day, it's up to 500. That's considered the low end of normal, but I feel pretty good. What we really want to do is pay attention to our symptoms. And remember, those symptoms are going to be things like lack of motivation, poor mood, low energy, definitely low sex drive or libido, just drive in general, problems with concentration, things of this nature. If you've got all those lifestyle elements that we just talked about dialed in and you're still feeling like, I just don't have the drive, I don't have the motivation, I just don't have the libido, my mood's still kind of crappy, I've got this low-grade depression happening, that might be a sign that your hormones are still low and you might benefit from treatment like hormone replacement therapy. So there you go. Optimizing your hormones can help you feel youthful and vital again. And anytime we take care of our hormonal health, we're really taking care of our whole body health. Okay, that's our show for today, folks. I want to remind you that you can join our free private Facebook group, and that is over at the Over 50 Lean Body Blueprint on Facebook. We would love to have you over there. You can find all of the show notes for this episode over at silveredgefitness.com/201. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in 2 important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to consider giving this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.